Howdy folks, we're looking at Edge Magazine issue 25, part 2, released in October 1995. And in the review section, it starts with Wipeout, one of the greatest games of 1995, not only 1995, but all of the 90s. And this game might have been more style than substance, but it had a lot of style and, well, enough substance. There are many sequels. Nowadays, every sequel hosts a new platform. The PlayStation Vita, I believe the PlayStation 4 also had a new version of Wipeout. So it's almost like a graphics demo. And it did quite well for the PlayStation 1 too, graphically. And I've never been a big fan myself. I preferred the original F-Zero on the Super Nintendo, but I totally respect this game. I've seen friends playing with the music on loud. I mean, the soundtrack at the time was, well, at least the most commercial I've ever heard, with The Prodigy and Chemical Brothers, and great music. So yeah, I saw friends enjoying the game, getting into the zone, and yeah, kind of like Tempest 2000. These are one of those kind of games you just get into and let the senses be overridden by what the game has to offer, and I can get that. So yeah, really cool game. Defined the PlayStation when it came to aesthetics. The layout is still legendary. There's a certain company that has this kind of layout in all their designs, and I could have looked it up. Nevertheless, classic stuff. And Edge gives it an 8. Could have been a 9 if you asked me, but 8 is good enough. So the first winning 11 game for the PlayStation 1. This would later become the Pro Evolution Soccer series, if I'm correct, which would dominate the football genre up until about 2008. And here's the very first one. And Edge mentions how the gameplay is quick, snappy, plays really nice. Yeah, the graphics are blocky, but who cares? You know, we're having such a good time playing this game. And they gave it a 7. Maybe later versions are better, I don't know. But for quite a while, Edge would continuously give these games a 9. So here we have Dennis Bergkamp and Gullit, two Dutch players who made it big in England. Hey, Command & Conquer, another classic. So the hits keep coming this month. Edge mentions that it's a lot like Dune 2. Now, I don't recall being able to carry multiple units in Dune 2 by, dragging a square on the screen. I remember doing that the first time in Warcraft. But I mean, that's enough. That alone is a big enough improvement. I remember clicking on each of the units individually and Dune 2 all over and over again. But no, this game had a lot more going for it than Dune 2. And Edge still gives it an 8. They also mentioned that the resolution is rather low. We didn't mind at the time. And yeah, there are a lot of FMV sections apparently. I never looked at those. This game was especially popular online, one of the big internet games of the mid-90s where you played against each other. Red Alert would do the same. For some reason, Warcraft 2 didn't have quite the same popularity, even though I preferred that game, which was released around the same time. Edge never reviewed Warcraft 1, and I don't think they reviewed Warcraft 2 either. So yeah, this is at the epitome of real-time strategy game popularity. Of course, StarCraft will come out later, but Command & Conquer would take it to new heights. There was a reason to get a PC. Hey, Philosoma. Okay, so this was not a classic. Made by Sony for the PlayStation. It's rather a lackluster 2D side-scrolling shoot-'em-up with lots of 3D graphics thrown in. Edge only gives it a 5. Not remembered very well. I mean, games like Radiant Silvergun and Ikaruga showed that you could do 3D images in a 2D shoot-'em-up. But this game didn't add much new to the formula. Zadnos, a horrible game apparently. I've never heard of it. The 3DO did have a game called what was it had a zany, I don't know. Don't worry, you don't have to know the name, because this was apparently a sequel to Twisted. That was it, Twisted, a game show game for your 3DO with kind of mature content and yeah, silly jokes, or very American. Edge gives it a 3, saying it won't attract people who like to play games, like board games, and it won't attract people who play video games. It's just the worst of both worlds. But 3DO did have Space Hulk released this month, a rather tactical shoot 'em up, 3D shooter, because I believe you had to control a squad against another squad. I don't know exactly how that went. Edge briefly discusses it. And yeah, it's made by Electronic Arts, the company who made most of the good games for the 3DO. So Space Hulk, somewhat slower than Doom. Well, it's hard to be faster than Doom. But quality quarter shooter for 3DO. And yet another above average game for the Alien console. Rainbow Islands is in the retro view. Now, I've never played this game, and it just wasn't that popular on the Nintendo, which I spent most of my time playing in the late 80s. Apparently, there's a good version for the Commodore, and also even was ported to the Spectrum. So maybe that's why this game is popular with Edge. They used the PC Engine version here. Fine, I didn't have that. But it's a platforming game, very vertical for a platforming game. And you make these rainbows, which can not only attack enemies, but you can use them as platforms. A lot of secrets, I'm told. So if you liked Bubble Bobble, who made the same game, you might want to check out Rainbow Islands, released in 1988. Was that an advertisement for ID? Huh. Alright. Shiny, having advertisement. Here we have Earthworm Jim. Sorry for the flare. Here's an interview with Bruce McMillan. Never heard of him before, but he apparently worked for all kinds of things before he landed at Electronic Arts at the time of this interview. And he worked on the FIFA game, so he has a lot to talk about football games like Sensible Soccer, which he loved, and how he made choices regarding the FIFA soccer games, both for the 3DO and the Mega Drive Super Nintendo versions. He doesn't talk about the PlayStation 1 version, though. I bet he worked on it, though. And the second half of the interview is more about the industry in whole. I love how Edge states that SGI, Silicon Graphics, might have been the worst thing that happened to game design. And he talks about, yeah, you know, it's just a tool using all those pre-rendered images. And you don't have to use them. But yeah, they did get in the way commercially. So, talk about if the 3DO is dead or not. And he's simply saying, well, yeah, just game. It's just got to have better games, but it's not looking like that. And have you been invited to join the Nintendo Dream Team? I can't comment on that, but they have a strong relationship with Nintendo. What does he say about the Ultra 64? It's going to be very strong in Japan because of the SNES and NES. I hope the software support is there and that Nintendo won't be too selective. So yeah, the Ultra 64 coming their way. People very curious without having seen anything yet. And the Q&A. Questions like, what's stronger, PlayStation or 486? Yeah. Somebody talked about a DX32 add-on for the SNES and Mega Drive. Well, that sounds like a copying device, according to Edge. So yeah, some silly questions. I won't get into that. Alright, so the next issue will be about SIGGRAPH 95, which wasn't that very interesting last year, but it's yeah, all about Silicon Graphics and what the graphic capabilities of the industry later on. So that might be interesting. I took a quick look, and there were much more interesting things next time, but we'll see that then. And another Edge logo, slightly different than this one. This one's less fiery. And let's look at the back quickly. Altogether, this makes one big image of some kind of steampunk kind of land. I don't know if this was ever used in a game. One last little thing. So about my videos, I've finally figured out how to make videos longer than 15 minutes. So from now on, there will only be part ones, and I'll be redoing the very first Edge magazine. I have it here. I'll be looking at this using 720p, which I have on the camera I'm using now. Better than the iPad, which only had 240p. And I'll be redoing that one. So you might want to look into that if you've made it this far. And it'll be mostly the same thing as the original video, but still, if you thought the quality of that one was too low. And it'll be longer before I do issue 2 until issue 11, because I don't feel like doing them all over again just to make them 720p. But you know, I think a lot of people will be looking at my channel thinking, I want to see Edge, the first one, and then they'll see the 240p and they'll be turned off. I don't want that. So at least I get issue 1 looking okay-ish. And then maybe one day, maybe for Christmas, I'll see if I can get a camera that does even higher resolution. We'll have to see about that. Thanks for watching, and the next time, either issue number 1 or issue 26. See you then.